Good afternoon. I think I finally got this to work. I was looking at different stuff for about 20 minutes trying to get the stream up. Um, Finally was able to do it. I'm going to be looking at the American battery technology. Yep, okay, it's good. Alright. I'm going to be looking at the earnings call here coming up in a second. Let's go through some of the main things I'm seeing here. The American Battery Company announced its fiscal year 2025 fourth quarter and full year financial results, highlighting significant growth in revenue and operational efficiency. The revenue growth surged to 2.8 million, marking a 183% increase from 1 million in Q3. Cost management rose by 70%, and the net loss reduction, its net loss to only 10.1 million, 57% improvement compared to the 23 million we saw in the past. And not only this, but there was a revenue increase which reached 4.3 million, up 1,150%. Operational efficiency is just moving up as it decreased by 30% to 31 million, and the cash position has increased to 25 million as a whole now. And this is all good stuff as we're going to start seeing more battery recycling expansion and government support, which I've seen in here. Not only this, but the CEO, Ryan Meltzer, expressed pride in his team's achievement as he stated, "We have an exciting path as we continue to the growth and operations at our current facilities while also accelerating the commercialization of our Tonopah Flats lithium project and our second battery recycling facility with our strategic partners." I think this is going to be one of the next big stocks, and I think there's a lot of room for growth here, and they're only going to continue to grow as time goes on, and there's only going to be more and more of a need for this type of business in society in general. And I think you're gonna have to look at the earnings today and use it as a marker for what the future can really hold in terms of battery recycling, all this other stuff, because it truly is the future of this type of market. So yeah, one thing I'm really excited about is from what I've seen is that there's significant process in scaling operations and enhancing financial performance. The company's strategic initiatives and government support, it puts it in a strong position to grow, especially as the battery sector. It's a real critical position to be in, and they're going to continue to want to expand this and see it in the future doing well. And we could just see this by the financial report as they secured a $144 million grant from the U.S. Department of Energy for a second recycling facility, and it's been added to the Russell 2000 recently, and it's only going to continue to grow and increase in volume, and I think it'd be tough to maybe even see 10 by the end of the year, as from all the research I've been doing. So here we are waiting for the, oh, there we go. Pause this music. There we go. Alright. Let me get the audio on.
Good
Oh,
afternoon.
there we
I'm
go.
Tiffany Mooring, and I'm the Director of Communications and Marketing at the American Battery Technology Company. I would like to welcome everyone to our fiscal fourth year quarter and full year 2025 earnings call. On behalf of the entire team at American Battery Technology Company, I would like to thank everyone for taking the time to join our call today. Following this presentation, a recording of this call, along with our press release and our quarterly SEC filing, will be available on our website at investors.americanbatterytechnology.com. This presentation includes forward-looking statements within the meaning of the safe harbor provisions of the U.S. Private Securities Litigation Act 1995. These statements are subject to risk and uncertainties that can cause actual results to differ from those anticipated. Additional information regarding the factors that may cause actual results to differ can be found in our annual filings. On today's call, our CEO and CTO, Ryan Meltzer, will provide remarks regarding our two lines of business, which include our lithium-ion battery recycling business and our primary claystone to lithium hydroxide business. It is now my pleasure to turn the meeting over to Ryan.
I'm excited to hear about the new
Great. Thank you,
facility.
Tiffany.
Is it actually a pre-recorded call? Are we
As
sure
many
about
of
that?
you know, we work in the critical mineral manufacturing business area. We are working to try to make the closed loop for the battery mineral supply chain within North America. Right now, this is much more of a linear economy, and as we work through this system, we're working with many of the partners in the other areas of the closed loop infrastructure. In order to fully implement this closed loop system, we found that multiple different aspects were needed to be added. The first is the implementation and commercialization of a lithium-ion battery recycling system. In this system, we take back waste material from other stages of the industry, as well as end-of-life material, recycle those materials through a multi-phase process, and then make battery-grade
100% Tiffany.
materials that are sold
Oh
right
man.
back into that closed
Oh,
loop.
I still want to hear this at least.
If the total amount of batteries in the field was stable in a mature industry, recycling could provide the vast majority of minerals needed. But with how quickly the battery industry is growing, in addition to closing the loop, we also need to be filling that loop the first time. So in addition to our battery recycling business unit, we have also acquired large amounts of mineral resources in the US and developed our own first-of-kind technologies of how to extract those individual battery elements, how to purify and upgrade them, and how to also make battery-grade products from our primary battery metals manufacturing business, in addition to our battery recycling business. As for our quarterly earnings that we are reviewing today, we're proud to show that compared to the previous quarter, we had a very large increase in revenue for the company. This is largely due to increased operations at our first battery recycling plant just outside of Reno. So we nearly tripled revenue this quarter compared to the quarter ending March. And at the same
Are
time,
they
we
going to
had a
include the
much
second
smaller
facility as
relative
well?
increase in our cash cost of goods sold, really showing that as we hit economies of scale and larger operation, the first recycling plant, our revenues are growing at a much faster pace than our costs. So we look forward to continuing to ramp this plant and continuing to improve that gross margin. Separate from our quarterly financials, we also did just finish our fiscal year. And when you tie those past 4 quarters together, we also see a very substantial increase in revenue of about $4.3 million for this past year, compared to about $0.3 million the year beforehand. And similarly, it's a much larger relative increase in revenue than the increase in the cash cost of goods sold, allowing for an increase in margin as we continue to scale that plant and improve operations. Beyond just the recycling plant, total operational costs for the business actually decreased this past year over the year beforehand, as we again experienced economies of scale and had cost control measures to improve operations. We were excited to have been selected to be listed on the Russell 2000 and 3000 indices back in June. This is really a sign that we have a different scale of investor as we move forward.
It's
And
going to drive
because of
volume.
that operations, we have seen a very substantial increase in trading volume since being added to that index, and a significant increase in percentage ownership from institutional investors. With that market activity, we've increased our cash balance to just over $25 million as of September 15th this year. As mentioned, our battery recycling operations, the main metric over the past year is that we have increased the throughput of our plant about 70% in a single quarter for the quarter ending June versus ending March. This really has been about a large amount of incremental improvements as we continue to add headcount, add shift count, have increased amounts of material, and improve our operations there. We've been working with several different projects at this recycling facility for the past few years. One of them is a grant contract we won from the U.S. Advanced Battery Consortium from a project that actually started back in the fall of 2021. We worked on that project for many years, and we formally closed out that project a few months ago, really able to show that we had achieved each of the requirements of that grant contract as we worked with the partners there, with the U.S. Department of Energy, General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis, to really demonstrate that this recycling plant could take in full-scale batteries, recover those materials, purify the battery metals up to battery grade, work with our partner, BASF, to actually take those recycled metals, manufacture large amounts of high energy density active cathode material specifically from those recycled metals, and make large amounts, over 100 full-scale automotive battery cells from our recycled metals, and actually test those cells at both our partner and Department of Energy facilities against control group cells, and really being able to show that there was very little difference about the performance of the battery cells when using our recycled metals versus using metals from the market.
There's a real
This is a
high
very
demand.
important
It's
step for
grown
going
12
through
times over year.
large-scale qualifications with many different customers. We were excited to receive financial support from the US ABC and to now have this project closed out as we move forward with these different opportunities. Because of our increased operations and the successes working with our partners on these early scale projects, last September, we were notified that we had been selected for a competitive grant from the US Department of Energy for $144 million to now construct a second battery recycling plant. We were selected back in September 2024, and through an accelerated process, we were contracted in December 2024 and actually started this project back on January 1st, 2025. So we're excited to be taking all the lessons learned in our first recycling plant, working through our next generation designs, and moving forward with a second battery recycling facility. Well, we work with
I
a
think
lot
they're
of
going to
automotive
accelerate the
companies. The
expansion soon.
past half year, we've really started to work even more with stationary grid battery systems. So these large battery energy storage systems usually work to support grid operations. They tend to be extremely large in the gigawatt hour scale and have a different type of load profile than we see within automotive batteries. But because we make battery grade minerals, they work equally well whether they're sold to companies to make batteries for vehicles or batteries for stationary storage. And similarly, we receive both types of material into our recycling facility near Reno. A few months ago, we were fortunate enough to have been invited to the groundbreaking ceremony of one of the fastest supercomputers in the world at Argonne National Lab near Chicago. And this supercomputer is backed up by large amounts of grid scale batteries. So it was great being able to join this ceremony. There were very few private companies actually in attendance. It was mostly different government organizations. And to really highlight how the US manufacturing of critical minerals supports data centers, supports supercomputers, and supports different types of artificial intelligence and machine learning operations. We were asked to present at this event actually to several dignitaries, including the US Secretary of Energy, Chris Wright, back in July. So really being able to explain to him directly at the Argonne
One of the
National
biggest problem
Laboratory
is the regulatory
why
hurdle.
both
So if
battery
we could get
recycling
in here
and
with this, will be
domestic
good.
lithium manufacturing are important to support data center, supercomputer, and artificial intelligence operations as we move forward. Because of our large amount of interactions with the DOE, it was great to be able to connect with this new administration and really show them the benefits of the projects we're working on together. When we look at our primary placed under lithium hydroxide technologies, over the past several years, we have been building out this multi-ton per day integrated pilot facility near Reno. While we finished bench scale operations a few years ago, it's very important to take those bench scale results and actually build demonstration scale integrated systems that operate in real time on a continuous fashion. This is a very big de-risking step as we look to be building out our commercial scale lithium hydroxide refinery. Similarly, we were fortunate enough to have the build-out of this demonstration facility supported by a Department of Energy grant. This project also started in the fall of 2021. And as of a few months ago, we've also officially closed out this project and completed all requirements, showing how we went through the design, construction, commissioning, and then sustained operations in a multi-week run, showing how we feed our specific Tonopah Flats claystone material into this plant, go through
If we
each of
see
the
an
operating
expansion of
steps,
electrical
and
vehicles,
make a
I think there's
battery-grade
going to be no
lithium
problem with
hydroxide
the
product
battery
out the back
recycling
end.
business.
So we've made many different scales of samples to be sent out to different strategic customers and to be able to go through different types of analytical evaluations, test manufacturing of different types of active cathode material, and again, making full-size battery cells with the lithium specifically extracted from our Tonopah Flats project. Because of the operations at our bench scale and these demonstration scale facility, we have continued to go forward with the design of our commercial scale 30,000 ton lithium hydroxide per year facility, working with our selected EPC firm, Black& Veatch, continuing to send these materials to customers for definition of different types of long-term offtake agreements as we progress that project. Building this demonstration facility has been great, advancing the technology and de-risking the construction, but a parallel effort is advancing our permitting progress for the local, state, and federal levels. We were excited a few months ago to have been selected by the White House, the National Energy Dominance Council, and the Fast-41 Permitting Council to have our Tonopah Flats Lithium project be selected as a transparency priority project, which is really meant to streamline all federal permitting operations for high priority critical mineral projects within the US. Being selected for this was important to really get alignment amongst many of the different federal agencies. And this transparency priority project was really set up by the executive order that President Trump issued back on March 20th. But on top of becoming a transparency priority project, there was actually an escalation, and we were approved to become a full covered project just back in August. So now having our Tonopah Flats Lithium project be a covered project, we have a project coordinator actually assigned to this effort, holding meetings amongst all different federal agencies and really driving visibility and accountability as we move forward. So just in the past few weeks, we've seen very significant acceleration of these permitting efforts as we work to bring these different federal groups together. And this Fast-41 committee works amongst all different federal agencies, including, we've mentioned that back in the spring, we did receive a letter of interest from the U.S. Export-Import Bank to provide a $900 million low-interest loan to support this Tonopah Flats lithium project.
I
So as
don't
a
think we're
federal
going to need it with
agency,
how much
this is
cash we
also
have.
being facilitated through the Permitting Council and through our selection as a covered project. We mentioned we were added to the Russell Index back at the end of June. Since being added, we have a different set of investors really owning and trading our stocks. We've seen a very significant increase in our trading volume per day since the end of June being selected, and also a big increase in the amount of institutional ownership. This has really provided many different types of discussions we've had with strategic investors since then, and has really facilitated different types of funding opportunities as we move forward. As a summary of our financial results for this fiscal year versus the previous one, as mentioned, a very substantial increase in revenue, really by increasing the operations and the ramp rates of our first battery recycling plant. Our cost of goods sold has increased, but at a lower percentage than our revenue has increased. And as we continue to scale that plant, we expect to see continued improvements in our margin. We continue to receive funds from our government grants we have contracted, including ones that have started partway through the fiscal year. So we do expect to see that increase as we ramp up those newer projects. And throughout the year, we were able to take in substantial funds through our financing activities, an increase in funds used for our operating activities as we continue to ramp up our first recycling plant, and a substantial decrease and our cash used for investing activities. As mentioned, our cash balance has increased substantially, both at the end of the fiscal year and as of mid-September, as we continue to receive funds, really facilitated by that listing on the Russell 2000 index and the exercising of several of our outstanding warrants. We still have a large balance on our contracted government grants, as these are multi-year projects that we continue to receive funds on as we move forward. And we have received some competitive tax credits last spring that will still be monetized as we move forward and continue to build out our first recycling plant near Reno and our second recycling plant in the Southeast US.
The $144 million
That's the summary
one's
of our
got to be
financial results for
the
the
most
past
important
fiscal
grant.
year. We will be holding our annual shareholder meeting in November, at which time we will go through more details about the operations of our past year and some more of our multi-year operations as we look more forward-looking. So at this time, I'd like to thank everybody for joining this earnings call as we went through the details of both our fiscal fourth quarter and our full fiscal year. And again, we look forward to seeing everybody in mid-November at our full annual shareholder meeting.
All right, that was a pretty good earnings call. I would say so myself. Some of the key things that I saw that stood out to me was the facility throughput increasing 70% in Q4, showing that they're scaling the capacity and there's operational efficiency. As they're going to continue to grow and grow, this is going to be important. And this is a big market, in my opinion, that has been really untapped in the last decade or two, as battery battery recycling has kind of gone under the radar, with a lot of people being unable to do it effectively and make a revenue out of it. But as we're seeing this, the company's been able to 12x basically their revenue in a year, and there's a huge market for this type of business. And I think one thing we could look out for is just continuing to see the closed end loop system, extracting reusable materials to supply the battery supply chain is going to reduce reliance on raw mining, and the government's only going to want us to increase this type of throughput and output by the company, as well as having the 25 million on the balance sheet right now as a buffer is very important and good to see, as we're seeing there, despite the revenue growth and the cost of goods sold increasing, where the company is controlling its costs and expanding the production. We're seeing at a micro level for the company. And not only this, but the strategic financing with the $900 million letter of interest from the Export-Import Bank for a lithium refinery shows confidence in their strategic growth plans, and that they expect this to be a much larger company in the next few years. Some of the things I'd look out for is that they also have this truly competitive advantage in the regulatory and the pressure from the environmental committees, because companies can recycle and supply battery materials sustainably, have a competitive advantage, and they've pretty much proven it at scale now, with them having the first mover kind of benefits, where they're scaling the recycling operations already, and they're becoming a reliable supplier for critical battery materials, and the government's loving this company, and we're seeing it as it kind of goes on. This company is only going to grow tenfold pretty much as they continue to lock in these contracts. Um, Everything's going to continue to grow, and we're going to continue to see growth opportunities with the Department of Energy backed expansions. And not only this, but we can see an increase in capacity and revenues for as they we see EVs start to accelerate in projections, and people acquiring them, which will only be good for the company. Not only this, but I want to highlight one of the things I saw here in August 2025. ABTC's Tonopah Flat Lithium Project Permitting Council and Energy Dominance Council to become a covered project, further prioritizing the streamlining of the permits and commercialization of the domestic critical mineral manufacturing project. This is very important as they're integrating mining and recycling, which could create a vertically integrated lithium supply chain where they continuously have possible exports and have a good business demand that continues to grow. Um, all right, that's pretty much what I kind of wanted to go over here. It was a very solid earnings call. There wasn't much more you could have really asked for them out of there. If anyone has any questions or anything in the chat, I'd love to answer them. If not, I'm gonna go over the what's the stock? The Firefly Aerospace Inc. call because I see that starting at 5, and it's another company that I have some interest in. I'm not too keen on their business as much. I think if we're being honest, American Batteries could hit 10 by the end of the year, and then after that, it's really as high as your thoughts could really go because this is a company that's going to continue to grow, continue to see resilience in the marketplace, and it's going to have a place in the market for a while. So if you're looking for a long-term investment, somewhere to just park your money, I think this is a good bet to have, especially with the first mover advantage they have on the market. And I think it's a must buy if you're looking at it from the perspective which I am. And okay, let's look at the Firefly Aerospace here. Here we go. Let me pull this up. Firefly Aerospace. Quarter 2. There we go. Why is it so hard to find the earnings? I'll just use this. This website's usually pretty good to me. Oh, dang, it got dark though. Let me turn on the lights real quick. Alright. Firefly Aerospace. Let me get here. Yeah, really good call. Let me put that there. Yeah, I'm really impressed with I don't know why it's not on my watch list. Should have that there. Where is it? Fly. Alright. Let me join the Let me try finding their earnings call first before I get too antsy here. Firefly earnings call. Dang, I'm struggling. Click here. Oh, maybe I think I found it. Nice. I am the best. I'm making it look professional now. Alright, when can I close this one? Sorry. American Battery, we went over. I think it's a very solid quarter in the books. And then let me update some of the other stuff here. Let me go to American Battery's dropping for some reason. I don't see any real reason for it to be dropping though. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm not too worried if you're worried. Then you can go find a different investment because I'm not worried at all. Alright, there we go. I couldn't hear thought. Oh, there we go. That is loud. I'm sorry about that, guys. Let me get this here. Nah, but if anything, I think American Batteries it's going to be a stronghold, really. That's going to be one of the biggest companies in the next couple years. and it's really only a matter of time. So if you're interested, make sure you do your own research, of course, but I would at least invest some amount of money in it. Let me change this here. Alright, so earnings call is about to start. Let me go over some of this stuff here. Let me check this out real quick. If anyone has any thoughts, feel free to comment in the chat. I love to read the comments and stuff if there's any questions. Alright. Let me just make sure I can get this here. What stock do I need? That's such an overreaction. Alright, let's just keep watching it though. Firefly Aerospace, Space and Defense Technology Company reported its financial results. Following its successful IPO in August 2025, the company raised $933 million. Firefly Aerospace reported promising Q2 2025 results following its IPO with a growing $1.3 billion backlog and progressive across launch and spacecraft programs. Second quarter highlights. Testified before Congress on the success of Blue Ghost Mission 1 and the critical future of NASA's commercial lunar payload. I think there's going to be a lot of room for different companies inside the space sector as a whole, and I don't think it's going to be a one person takes all sort of deal, which is why I think you're going to have to keep an eye out uh, on the different companies right now, and it's very competitive. So not only that, but it's also very volatile. I've noticed, especially one of my biggest investments has been in Rocket Lab as well as ASTS, which I know people like to group in, even though it's more of a telecommunications company. But one of the things I've noticed is that it's very volatile, and so the earnings right now, the price has dropped a substantial amount, but I don't think it's anything worth stressing over. And I think it's really one thing to not bring it to your head and just continue investing, because they're getting contracts from NASA. They're reaching 95 tests of the new engine, and they're continuing to grow at a strong level, which is unprecedented for companies of this size, especially as they're trying to figure stuff out, kind of. So one of the things I'm looking at here, revenue revenue has decreased, but ooh, for the six, wait, why am I reading this weird? Am I reading this weird? Oh wait, I am reading it. Okay, I'm an idiot. All right, this looks pretty good. Everything looks pretty good. People are gonna bring into fact the common share decreases, some of the shortcomings inside the revenue and all, but realistically, it's not a problem. Let's watch it. Yo, this music's not bad. I'm used to the music being like classical, medieval music, so this is actually a pretty nice change of pace. It's kind of loud though. Let me turn it down. Oh, there we go. I think.
Greetings. Welcome to the Firefly Aerospace second quarter 2025 financial results conference call. At this time, all participants are in a listen-only mode. A question and answer session will follow the formal remarks. To ask a question during the session, you will need to press star 11 on your telephone. You will then hear an automated message advising your hand is raised. To withdraw your question, please press star 11 again. Please note, this conference call is being recorded. I will now turn the conference over to Michael Sheets, Firefly's Director of Investor Relations. Michael, you may begin.
Thank you, Operator. Hello there. I'm Michael Sheets, and welcome to Firefly's inaugural quarterly financial results call. I'm pleased to be joined on the call by CEO Jason Kim and CFO Darren Ma as we report our second quarter 2025 results for the period ending June 30th, 2025. Today's call will include forward-looking statements, including but not limited to statements the company will make about its future financial and operating performance, growth strategy, and market outlook. Actual results may differ materially from those contemplated by these forward-looking statements. Factors that could cause the actual results and trends to differ materially are set forth in the annual and quarterly reports filed with the SEC. Firefly assumes no obligation to update any forward-looking statements, which speak only as of their respective dates. Also in this call, we will discuss both GAAP and non-GAAP financial measures. A reconciliation of GAAP to non-GAAP measures is included in the second quarter 2025 filing. Unless otherwise stated, financial information referenced in this call will be non-GAAP. Our earnings press release, SEC filings, and a replay of today's call can be found on our investor relations website at investors.fireflyspace.com. Now, I'll turn the call over to Jason.
Thank you, Michael, and welcome to our second quarter 2025 earnings call. We're proud to be reporting quarterly results for the first time on the heels of our historic IPO, the largest by a U.S. space and defense company and one of the largest of any industrials company in the 21st century, raising $1 billion in gross proceeds to supercharge our growth. For those new to our journey, Firefly is a space and defense company delivering rockets and satellites to perform the hardest missions in space for national security, exploration, and commercial technology, built to keep America as the leader in space. Our products position us to support the $175 billion Golden Dome opportunity, as well as NASA's Moon to Mars plan. We have four revenue-generating products: our small lift Alpha rocket, medium lift Eclipse rocket, Blue Ghost lunar lander, and Electra satellite orbiter. Today, these products have a robust backlog of $1.3 billion. Our backlog consists of high-quality customers with critical missions that shape the world we live in. Alpha is differentiated as the only operational one-ton-to-orbit rocket. It is the first and only rocket to successfully perform a tactically responsive space launch with a 24-hour notice for the U.S. Space Force. Alpha's one-ton capability gives our customers more options to perform critical high-stakes missions to help deter threats and maintain our freedom. Earlier this year, Kratos onboarded Alpha to the Missile Defense Agency's MACH-TB 2.0 contract to launch hypersonic missile tests, further diversifying the upside opportunities to our backlog. All of Alpha's proven technologies are scaled up to our larger reusable Eclipse rocket, capable of carrying 16 tons to orbit. This medium lift rocket is built to support commercial constellations, exploration, and the National Security Space Launch Program. Eclipse is a right-sized launch vehicle, meeting the growing customer demand for dedicated missions. Earlier this year, Firefly became the first company in the world to successfully land on the moon. In total, Blue Ghost sent nearly 120 gigabytes of data back to Earth, supporting 10 NASA payloads and unlocking new insights that will have a substantial impact on future human and robotic missions to the Moon, Mars, and beyond. Blue Ghost Mission 1 was not only the longest commercial operation on the Moon to date, but also set the tone for the future of commercial exploration across cislunar space. The other spacecraft in our portfolio is Electra, a multi-orbit, multi-mission satellite capable of high-performance maneuvering missions. Electra will support national security capabilities, including space domain awareness with rendezvous proximity operations, resilient long-haul communications, and high-resolution planetary observation. Now turning to our business update. In the second quarter, we completed a host of program milestones while also winning new contracts across our product lines. I'll start with spacecraft. In April, I had the honor of testifying before the United States Congress, speaking to the House Committee on Science, Space, and Technology about the
It's
success
tough
of Blue
because of
Ghost
how early
Mission
I feel
1
like they
and its
IPO'd.
historic role in NASA's Commercial Lunar Payload Services Initiative. The bipartisan congressional support for more lunar missions is a welcome boon to Firefly as we ramp up annual cargo deliveries to the moon's surface. NASA continues to be an outstanding customer, especially as Blue Ghost delivers research and science to maximize returns on investment. Firefly is working with NASA to pave the way for international and commercial partners to build the logistics that support the lunar economy on and around the moon. And Firefly is steadily working on our next lunar missions. Blue Ghost Mission 2, valued at $130 million, will deliver our lander to the far side of the moon, marking the first such mission by a U.S. lander. The structures for this mission entered assembly in our spacecraft clean room after completing the crucial integration readiness review earlier this year. The first payloads arrived with Australian company Fleet Space delivering its Spider payload and NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory delivering their user terminal. We are also conducting Spectre engine testing in preparation for Blue Ghost Mission 2. Additionally, we signed another customer to Blue Ghost Mission 2 through our contract with the United Arab Emirates Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center to fly their Rashid 2 rover. This UAE contract carries dual significance. It represents both Firefly's expansion of Blue Ghost services to commercial and international customers. It also shows how we can add value to core NASA contracts by selling additional capacity on our lander. In December, NASA awarded Firefly's third Blue Ghost contract, valued at $180 million. Our team completed a systems requirements review, allowing us to move forward with design and development of the lander system. And as you will hear more about later, NASA awarded a $177 million contract for Blue Ghost Mission 4 in July. All of these missions support the growing NASA CLIPS initiative, which recently received a $250 million budget increase for fiscal year 2026. Moving to Electra product line under Firefly's spacecraft business. In the second quarter, we secured a contract from the Pentagon's Defense Innovation Unit for Electra Mission 3, flying in 2027 to demonstrate responsive rendezvous proximity operations using our Electra vehicle. This mission positions us well for upcoming opportunities like the Space Force's RGXX Geosynchronous Space Domain Awareness Program of Record. Notably, the high-thrust maneuverability, ample fuel reserves, and generous payload capacity of Electra are well suited for future Golden Dome space-based interceptor hosts. We also unveiled our Ocular imaging service, which Electra will host on upcoming Blue Ghost missions. This groundbreaking commercial lunar imaging capability, enabled through telescopes provided by Lawrence Livermore Laboratory, uses our Electra vehicles in lunar orbit
Let's get to
to
the
provide
numbers,
high-resolution data. Oculus will map the surface of the moon and provide space domain awareness services for customers to purchase during 5-year missions. Finally, we're looking forward to Electra's first demonstration mission. The spacecraft completed testing and is preparing to launch. Electra Mission 1 will test and validate Electra's core capabilities, as well as demonstrate Extenti Phantom Ride dispenser for the National Reconnaissance Office. Shifting to the launch side of our business, the FAA approved Alpha to return to flight. Alongside the FAA, government agencies, customers, and industry experts, our independent review board conducted a thorough mishap investigation that found Alpha's flight safety system performed as expected through all phases of flight and pose no risk to public safety. In the words of our Alpha chief engineer, technical challenges are not roadblocks. They are catalysts and opportunities to improve. As a result, we increased the thermal protection system thickness on stage 1 and
If
will
we're looking
reduce
at
our
it as a
angle of attack
comparison
during key
between
phases of the
some of the
flight.
other companies on the market, I think you're better
Above
off
all,
investing
safety
in
and
something
quality
like
are
Rocket
of the
Lab
highest importance.
and waiting
With
for
FAA
other
approval
companies
to
because there's
return
too
to
much risk
flight
right
and
now at
corrective
this
actions
price.
implemented, Firefly is now working to determine the next available launch window for Alpha Flight 7. We are ramping Alpha flight cadence to meet the strong demand for launch services, especially for responsive national security missions and our best-in-class customers. We expect to launch Alpha 2 more times this year and are building ahead with several additional Alpha vehicles in production. Earlier this year, Alpha won a Space Force award for the Victus Sol mission, a $22 million contract under the growing Tactically Responsive Space program. That program received a $135 million budget increase for fiscal year 2026. In the second quarter, Alpha won an award from the Air Force Research Laboratory. This contract will work on developing a ceramic rocket engine nozzle, which aims to reduce nozzle mass by up to 50% through use of lightweight materials. We are finding ways to enhance performance as we scale up Alpha production to deliver a more robust vehicle and a faster launch cadence for our customers. Additionally,
I
the
think it's a
United
little
States
too
and
early to
Sweden
invest in
signed a
this company, in my
technology
opinion,
safeguards
but I'm
agreement.
listening more.
We've already partnered with the Swedish Space Corporation to launch Alpha vehicles from Europe. This critical regulatory milestone unlocks international growth opportunities and supports higher Alpha launch cadences. Moving to our Eclipse launch vehicle, Northrop Grumman invested $50 million into Firefly to further advance production. Alongside Northrop, we continue to make progress in developing Eclipse flight hardware with qualification testing underway. Eclipse is steadily completing milestones to our inaugural launch next year. We built and fit-checked the first stage tanks for Eclipse's debut flight, and we've begun structural and load testing of the engine bay that will house our 7 Miranda engines. These powerful Miranda engines are progressing through our rigorous test campaign with more than 90 hot fire tests completed to date, including full power and mission duty cycle firings. Our team is hard at work executing on Eclipse development, especially as we prepare to compete for national security launches.
I think the $50 million
alongside our partner
investment
Northrop
is
Grumman.
one of the biggest things that
Our
kind of has gone under the
200-foot
radar.
tall, 15-foot wide Eclipse fills an important gap for dedicated missions for our customers. With that business summary, I'll turn it over to Darren for a review of the second quarter financials.
One thing is they're
Thank you,
still
Jason.
projecting
With this being
133
our
to
first earnings call,
145 million.
I'm going to
So there's
review
got
the
to be something
financials
near
for the
term that
second
we don't
quarter
know.
and discuss our revenue outlook for 2025. A more detailed presentation of our financial results is contained in the financial tables included in the news release we published earlier. Before we start, I will take a few minutes to explain how operational metrics drive the financial performance of the company. Key operational metrics include the number of launches and execution on key program milestones across both our spacecraft and launch businesses. For example, in our spacecraft business, we focus on delivery milestones because the revenue is generally recognized as a percentage of completion under each contract. For the launch business, we focus on the number of launches. Revenue for our operational Alpha vehicle is recognized at a point in time when the launch occurs. For Eclipse, which is in development, we recognize revenue as a percentage of completion based on program milestones as part of the Northrop Grumman partnership. Once the Eclipse vehicle is operational, we will recognize revenue as launches occur. It is important to note that the timing of revenue could be impacted by things that are outside of our control, especially on the launch side. Now turning to our second quarter financial results. We generated revenue of $15.5 million. This compares with $55.9 million in the first quarter and $21.1 million in the same quarter a year ago. As a reminder, the successful launch of Blue Ghost Mission 1 drove an increase to our first quarter revenue. Spacecraft revenue for the second quarter was $9.2 million, based on achieving key contract milestones. Launch revenue was $6.3 million, driven by non-recurring engineering for Eclipse development. We ended the second quarter with a total backlog of approximately $1.1 billion. In addition, we have a robust pipeline of revenue opportunities that is incremental to the backlog conversion. For example, our backlog increased in July of this year when we secured our fourth lunar mission from NASA of approximately $177 million, bringing our current backlog to $1.3 billion. Second quarter gross margin was 25.7%. This compares with 4% in the prior quarter and 14% in the same quarter a year ago. The sequential gross margin increase was primarily driven by a customer-requested contract modification that results in an overall increase in contract value for our Blue Ghost Mission 2. I should point out that gross margin in the near term could fluctuate from quarter to quarter based on the timing of alpha launches and primarily because of the current accounting classification of our alpha launch.
I think there's going to have to be more dilution in the future.
Alpha costs are currently
just because of
R&D.
how much they've raised from the IPO and all.
We expect alpha costs to be capitalized as inventory and recognized as cost of goods sold at the same time as launch. Non-GAAP operating expenses for the second quarter were $55.8 million, compared with $57.9 million in the first quarter and $51.4 million in the same quarter a year ago. We expect operating expenses for the remainder of 2025 to increase, driven by Eclipse development, alpha material purchases, and spacecraft development. The primary difference between GAAP and non-GAAP operating expenses are one-time expenses, such as IPO expenses, stock-based compensation expense, and other one-time expenses. Non-GAAP operating loss was $51.8 million, compared with a loss of $55.7 million in the first quarter and a loss of $48.5 million in the second quarter a year ago. Our non-GAAP net loss in Q2 was $57.1 million. This compares with a net loss of $56.3 million in the prior quarter and $53 million in the same quarter a year ago. Adjusted EBITDA in the second quarter was negative $47.9 million, compared with negative $47.1 million in the first quarter and negative $47.7 million in the second quarter a year ago. Turning to our balance sheet, as of June 30th, our cash and cash equivalents and restricted cash were approximately $221.5 million. While we are not presenting an updated balance sheet as of today, I do want to note that we raised nearly $1 billion in gross proceeds through our successful IPO in August. Following the IPO, we used $148.1 million to pay off our term loan, leaving us with approximately $1 billion in cash equivalents, and restricted cash as of the end of August. In addition,
I think that's the biggest thing that came out of the IPO.
We secured a $125 million revolving line of credit, which gives us additional liquidity to support our growth objectives. CapEx was $9.2 million, compared with $2.7 million in the first quarter and $17.3 million in the second quarter a year ago. The sequential increase was primarily driven by investments for Eclipse infrastructure and our East Coast launch facility in Wallops, Virginia. Free cash flow was a negative $37.3 million, compared with a negative $59.2 million in the first quarter and a negative $37.6 million in the second quarter a year ago. The sequential improvement was primarily driven by a customer payment for Blue Ghost Mission 1. Now turning to our revenue guidance for fiscal 2025. We currently expect revenue will be in a range of $133 million to $145 million. In summary, our capital-efficient operating model, combined with disciplined execution, continues to support revenue growth, margin expansion, and strong cash flow conversion potential over time. Firefly's fortified balance sheet positions us to scale our market-leading products and fuel strategic growth in the years ahead. Now, I will turn the call back over to Jason for his closing remarks.
Since the end of the second quarter, Firefly is pushing forward with additional wins. NASA's award of Blue Ghost Mission 4 in July represents back-to-back lunar lander contracts for our team. The contract will see Blue Ghost deliver 5 NASA payloads to the moon's south pole in 2029 and increases our backlog to $1.3 billion.
the year to
As
really
with
look
Blue Ghost
around
missions 2
in
and
the next
3,
3 years is
and
how is
Electra
this
will
company
support our
really going to
fourth mission.
develop?
Our Blue Ghost lander enables NASA to evaluate the moon's south pole resources, such as hydrogen and water, as well as study the radiation and thermal environment. We are honored to be supporting yet another critical NASA mission. We are proud to support the United States building a sustainable, long-term presence on the lunar surface and fortify U.S. leadership of the ultimate high ground. In late breaking as of this morning, I am pleased to share that NASA added $10 million to our Blue Ghost Mission 1 contract as an addendum to acquire high-value data. This goes
That's pretty
above and
big,
beyond the
actually.
base contract to include large amounts of lunar surface images. This is significant as it shows how each NASA CLIPS mission has opportunities for additional high-margin recurring revenue generation. This addendum contract also demonstrates the market for our Ocula commercial lunar imaging service, deploying as part of upcoming Blue Ghost missions starting in 2026. As a U.S. Air Force veteran, I'm proud that Firefly is an American-based company with American manufacturing and supported by American suppliers. Firefly is vertically integrated with production-hardened facilities and engineering teams that are based in Austin, Texas. The unique co-location of our manufacturing, testing, and integration allows us to deliver our products on cost, schedule, and at increasing capacity. We have core technology advantages through our carbon composite technology used across all of our product lines, as well as patented, scalable tap-off cycle engines that are shared across our launch vehicles. For those who are new to Firefly, thank you for joining us in this journey. And for the many longtime supporters, thank you for your years of belief and continued backing. And to our Fireflies, thank you for your bold, can-do attitude and your dedication to our mission. Together, we inspire the world, unlock new categories in space, and deliver critical national security capabilities for America and its allies.
Thank you, Jason. Operator, we're ready to take questions.
Thank you.
I might listen to
Ladies
one
and
or two of
gentlemen,
the
as a reminder
questions,
to ask the question,
but
please press
I don't
star
think I'm
one
going to
one on your
stick around for
telephone,
all of them.
then wait for your name to be
Here,
announced.
let me
To
see.
withdraw your question, please press star one one again. Please stand by while we compile the Q&A roster. Our first question comes from the line of Sheila Kahyaoglu with Jefferies. The line is open.
Good morning, guys, and good afternoon. Congratulations on a successful launch in more ways than one. Maybe if we could start on the first question. With the FAA approving return to flight for Alpha, how are you thinking about the timing of Flight 7 and 8, and how does that feed into your targeted launches for 26? What are the range of potential outcomes for next year, thinking about production capacity versus the current backlog?
Thank you, Sheila. We received our FAA return to flight determination at the end of August. We expect to launch Flight 7 in the coming weeks.
I think this next launch is going to be big time because right now I think what are they?
That Flight 7
They're like
is
4
in mature
for
state,
8
right next
on
to
launches, so this
Flight
is going to
8
be
in a
big.
mature state, and so we keep increasing our production capacity, and we're building ahead as well for 2026. So we're working closely with the range and our customer, Lockheed Martin, to share more details on the mission and payload soon. But above
You gotta love to
all,
hear Lockheed
safety and
Martin as
quality
an
are the
investor.
highest importance.
Got it. And maybe if we could talk about Golden Dome. We've heard a lot about it, but some companies are starting to solidify what it could mean. How do you think about the opportunity, and what news should we look to hear? What is sort of the framework and expected timing you're thinking about as it relates to Golden Dome?
Thank you, Sheila. Yeah, being an Air Force veteran, Golden Dome is something near and dear to my heart and the Fireflies. We have 3 product lines at the company that are well positioned to support the Golden Dome architecture. First off, Alpha. It is a commercially available rocket, and we're increasing our production capacity to deliver more and more Alphas per year. It can support launching surrogate targets for the Golden Dome missions. It could also support launching test missions of things like hypersonic missiles as well as space-based interceptors. And it also can serve as a operational rocket as well. As you know, we were the first and only to launch a 24-hour call-up mission on the Victus Nox mission, and that's something that is helpful for the Golden Dome mission. On the spacecraft side, our Electra spacecraft, with its ample fuel reserves and its high thrust and maneuverability, as well as its payload carrying capacity, is well suited to support space-based interceptor host missions. And there's optionality there to provide that as a prime or as a subcontractor. And then finally, Eclipse, it's a 16-ton rocket. It is capable of launching constellations, whether they be sensors or space-based interceptors in the future. And that's part of onboarding onto the National Security Space Launch Program.
I think they are pretty a
Great.
good
Okay, thank you so much.
candidate for the Golden Dome,
Thank you.
just because of the battery
Please
swap
stand by for our next question.
infrastructure and other
Our
projects.
next question comes from the line of Seth Seifman with J.P. Morgan. Your line is open.
Hey, thanks very much, and good afternoon. Wanted to ask, starting off, maybe if you could talk a little bit about expectations for either EBITDA or free cash flow for the year.
Yeah, hey Seth, this is Darren. So as of now, we're guiding to annual revenue. We're focused on hitting the operational metrics, which is, as we discussed previously, is very much linked to our financial performance, and that's essentially what we're guiding to right now.
Okay.
Quick and easy answer.
And then just maybe a little bit more qualitatively, as we think about the path to Eclipse launch and kind of have the potential perhaps to do that next year. Can you walk us through maybe some of the milestones along the way as we think about going from where we are now to the collaboration you'll have with Northrop next year to get that launch up?
Yeah, Seth, this is Jason. Thank you for that question. We're extremely grateful and excited to be partnered with Northrop Grumman. They're our co-developer on the Eclipse program. As you remember, in second quarter, Northrop Grumman, they invested a first-of-a-kind investment into Firefly at $50 million. We are working on the milestones towards our inaugural launch. We've completed our Miranda flight engine testing as of recently, over 90 hot fire tests that include full mission duty cycle hot fire testing at 206 seconds, as well as at 100% thrust. We're going to move into qualifying that engine and then building.
I still wonder
the
how
flight
they're
engines.
expecting
We also
$145 million
have
in revenue.
developed the engine bay, and that's undergoing testing. So once we complete testing there, we would integrate the 7 flight Miranda engines with the engine bay. We've also done fit checks of the integration of our liquid oxygen tank and our RP1 tank. We've completed the integration of that, and so the next step would be to mate the engine bay with the tanks and the aft section. From there, we would deliver that to Northrop Grumman to integrate with the second stage, complete the payload fairing with the payload, integrate the payload, and jointly conduct the launch campaign at our Wallops pad.
Great, excellent. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
That was a very good
Please
question,
stand by for our next
especially
question.
after the Golden Dome question. It's kind of
Our
the
next
two
question
main
comes
things
from the
people
line
worried
of
about.
Colin Canfield with Cantor. Your line is open.
Hey, thank you for the question. If you could maybe update us on the timeline for NSSL Lane 1 and maybe kind of talk about how the team is thinking about their proposal ahead of the December window, and specifically what are customers saying kind of about the time frame from transition from onboarding to initial contract award. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin, for that question. We wanted to provide a credible offering, And so one of the requirements of onboarding into the U.S. Space Force's National Security Space Launch Program, Lane 1, is to have a credible plan for the first launch. We anticipate that first launch being in the late 2026 timeframe. And so we're pursuing, along with our co-developer Northrop Grumman, a proposal for late this year to be submitted. Once onboarded, you would need to have a first launch before bidding the first task orders, and the first task orders would be after the first quarter of 2027.
So that means they're basically
Got
not
it.
going to make
Okay.
any money for the
And
next
then
year.
in terms of the tactically responsive space line item in the supplemental that was mentioned in the script, the 135 million, can you maybe discuss kind of the velocity of the money and what contracting officers are saying with respect to kind of potential near-term unlock in terms of awards? I think one of the things that we've gotten feedback from other supplemental-oriented players is that they're seeing a pretty fast acceleration of that kind of related spend versus base accounts. But happy to hear kind of what your experience sounds like.
Yeah, we're very positive on this additional $135 million that was put into the reconciliation budget because of our Victus Knox experience, and we subsequently have been put on contract for Victus Haze and Victus Sol. We're very much looking forward to working with the Space Safari's Space Force customer on the next missions. We would like to have as many of our Alpha rockets that we can fit in storage at our Vandenberg Space Force base so that we could be ready at any time to launch more tactically responsive space launches in a 24-hour timeline so that we can continue to deter our U.S. rivals.
Got it. Thank you for
With
the
how
thought.
much rivalry there's going to be going on here, I think
Thank
it's
you.
going to be big, and the
Please
government's going
stand
to
by
step
for our
in,
next question.
especially with the Golden Dome. It's
Our
only a
next
matter of
question
time,
comes
really, by
from the
the
line
year,
of
next few years.
Christine Leweg with Morgan Stanley. Your line is open.
Great. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Maybe on Alpha, you called out that you're going to change the design of the reinforcement of the thermal protection. I was wondering how much of a design change is that? Is that major or minor, and how mature is your progress there? And then second, you talked about changing the angle of attack on the rocket launch. Does that change the what kind of missions you could fulfill for your customers?
Hi, Christine, it's Jason. There is no change to the design. It's just adding more layers of the thermal protection system to the bottom of the first stage, and it's negligible in terms of mass. The second part of that question is how does this change the angle of attack? We can control that at different critical phases of the flight profile, and so that is something that we can plan for and can control as well.
Great, super helpful. And if I could do a follow on, you guys called out the addendum contract, $10 million from NASA on Blue Ghost 1. I was wondering, are there more opportunity to sell more data to other governments and commercial customers? And can you size the opportunity of these kinds of potential annuities that you could get from these kinds of additional
Yeah, it'd be nice
contracts?
for them to expand on the 10 million.
Thank you for that question, Christine. So the answer is yes. We at Firefly, we own that data, and so we are able to sell that commercial data license to multiple customers. This was really helpful for us because it was the first of many data sales that we plan to do. You heard Ocula, and that is something that is very core to the Ocula service that we unveiled a couple months ago. I'll pass it on to Darren to talk more.
Yeah, Christina, I'd say engineering change proposals are common across our firm fixed price contracts. For example, on Blue Ghost Mission 1, prior to this data buy, the team's already been executing on engineering change proposals, increasing that contract from $93.3 million up over $100 million over time. So we fully expect this trend to continue. It really gives us a differentiated revenue stream with higher margin dollars going forward with things like Ocula, as Jason mentioned.
So the data is
Great. If I
completely
could
in their
sneak a
hands. That's
third
nice
and
to hear.
last one, with the Blue Ghost 4 contract you got this summer, how did that contract turn out versus your expectations? And can you provide some sort of revenue recognition expectations for that since that's not launching until 2029? And also any sort of profitability metrics that we should monitor?
Yeah. So Blue Ghost Mission 4, we had 2 opportunities to win, one to win another additional Blue Ghost contract going forward. We did plan on winning one of the 2, and it's a example of how the team has converted, opportunities in the backlog. It's a significant opportunity that the team has executed on. From a revenue recognition perspective, it's recognized over percentage completion basis, very similar to Blue Ghost Mission 1, which you guys saw how it plays out in our financials.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please stand by for our next question.
There's some pretty big
Our
analysts
next
on this
question comes
call.
from the line of Suji DeSilva with Roth Capital. Your line is open.
Hi, Jason, Darren, Michael. The backlog, can you just update us on the rough mix of launch and spacecraft, and maybe more specifically within the alpha launch backlog, how much of that is national security responsive versus other? If you give some rough estimate there, that'd be helpful.
Yeah. So today, I'd say we haven't really disclosed the split between launch and spacecraft, but if you reference, how our revenue split between Q2, it was a majority of spacecraft. So, I'd say prior to Blue Ghost Mission 4, most of our backlog was more on the launch side, but with Jason's background as in the spacecraft sector over decades of experience, we would expect that weighting to shift over time and perhaps even outpace the launch side in the future.
They need to work on the backlog for sure. And it's only going to happen as they keep
And then
testing right now.
I think there was there was an announcement about NASA's Viper rover launch, and I'm just curious, is there a roadmap, Jason, of kind of how much capacity you can carry to the moon with the Blue Ghost and paired up with Electra potentially as we move toward cargo? I know you're taking the UAE rover yourselves, larger cargo, infrastructure cargo, and then over time manned. If you could help us understand the roadmap you're planning, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, thanks, Suji. This is just the beginning. Although we have the most number of commercial lunar payload services contract out of any commercial company right now with NASA, we have a long-term roadmap where we build big things here at Firefly. If you look at, for example, at our Eclipse rocket, that's a 200-foot rocket by 15 feet diameter. So that's a large
That's pretty
structure.
big, I'm not going to lie.
If you look at our Blue Ghost 2 mission, we just sent a full stack of our lunar lander and our DPAF with our Electra vehicle, which sits at 22 feet high, to get environmentally tested at Jet Propulsion Laboratory. So we're already building bigger and bigger things. We are able to scale our technology because we're using carbon composite structures and tanks, and all of our lunar lander technology that helped us successfully land stable and upright on Blue Ghost 1 is transferable to those bigger systems. So long term, we would like to put not only lunar landers on the moon, but more rovers, potentially light terrain vehicles, infrastructure like power plants. So that is all inclusive of our lunar lander roadmap. We see more than just annual missions to the moon, but multiple missions annually to the moon by the end of the decade.
That's really big news actually to hear on that guidance.
Thank you.
The price hasn't been moving too much though. I think it's going to close for options to expire.
Our next question comes from the line of Edison Yu with Deutsche Bank. Your line is open.
Hey, thank you, and congratulations on the first earnings call going public. I want to ask about the strategy from around potentially some M&A. You obviously raised quite a bit of money. Any kind of types of assets out there that you're kind of vetting or interested in, and maybe if you could dimension kind of the size and scope you'd be willing to do.
That's a good question on what
Thank
the
you,
future
Edison.
kind of holds for the company.
We look at M&A using our well-defined process as it relates to M&A targets. First and foremost, any M&A target has to fit our strategy. We have a robust long-term strategy. It also has to fit our culture, our Firefly culture, which is one of a can-do spirit, as well as speed and collaboration and technology and innovation. Also, there are synergies that the M&A target could provide to our existing product lines. So those are things that we look for in companies.
Understood. Understood. And then follow-up question on Electra. I think you made a reference to RGXX in the opening remarks. I was wondering if you could maybe elaborate around that. Is that supposed to be potentially a template for some future program that Electra would go after, or how should we think about that kind of reference you made?
Well, if you recall, RGXX is a follow-on to the Geosynchronous Space Situational Awareness Program, which once was a $6 billion program of record that the traditional prime contractors were developing. It is a requirement that is still needed
This is
going
adding too
forward.
much, in my
But
opinion, so I'm probably
earlier
going to be
this
for another
year,
five
the
minutes, maybe.
Pentagon signed out a acquisition decision memo to open up the competition for the next generation mission called RGXX to commercial providers like Firefly and bring in our transformative commercial technologies. It just so happens that earlier this year, we won a DIU contract for our Electra Mission 3, and that mission is to perform space domain awareness using rendezvous proximity operations. And I already mentioned that Electra has ample fuel reserves, high thrust maneuverability, as well as carrying capacity for different payloads. We're able to apply that same technology to the RGXX program of record.
Great. If I could sneak in one housekeeping, the $10 million extra, is that going to be recognized in 3Q as revenue, or what's the rev rec on that $10 million for Blue Ghost?
That's a good question,
That's
because I'm wondering
correct,
with the
Edison, and
150.
we did plan for that in our
Okay, see,
in our
that's where the
in
145
our
million
roadmap.
revenue comes
Okay,
in.
thank you.
So that's included in there. So
Thank you.
that's not as good as we
Ladies
initially
and
thought it was.
gentlemen, I am showing no further questions in the queue. I would now like to turn the call back over to Michael for closing remarks.
Thank you, everyone, for attending today's call. We look forward to speaking with you all again when we report our third quarter financial results. Let's fly.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes today's conference call. Thank you for your participation. You may now disconnect.
All right, there we go. Not the worst call I've ever seen in my life. Not the best call either. Some of the things I want to point out real quick while I still got you guys here, and that I wrote down as notes for the company, is the revenue of 15 million, slightly exceeding the analyst expectations, and the net loss of 64 million, or 580 a share, which was wider than the anticipated loss of 42 cents per share. After excluding non-recurring costs, the adjusted loss per share was 530, missing the consensus estimate by $4.88. And one of the main things that I noticed with this call and the earnings report is the contract backlog. And as they have a backlog of 1.3 billion and $176 million NASA contract for the Blue Ghost Mission 4 lunar landing in 2029. I think you're gonna have to look out for that, and not only that, but with the securement of the 50, I gotta turn that music off. The $50 million investment from Northrop Grumman to support the development of the Eclipse launch vehicle, a medium lift rocket scheduled for its first launch in 2026. That's going to be big, and in a $50 million investment, it's nothing to laugh about. It's not a small little feat. And for a first earnings call, it's definitely not bad. Of course, you're going to expect the stock to go down a little bit. It's only a matter of when for these types of companies, especially like we saw with Rocket Lab over the last year. We've seen with Lunar. Lunar's kind of missed, but um, ASTS has grown over the last year, and as the contract backlog is now at 1.3 billion, and we see that huge NASA contract, I think you're really going to be looking at a good forward-looking company, and the management's confidence in near-term execution is really something to be kind of proud of if you're investing in this company. And not the one problem I did have was that they included the 10 million that they received today with their expectations, which they provided earlier in the reports and earlier guidances. That is a little bit of a misguidance, I think, on their end, and that's probably why we're seeing the stock dropping right now. But if it continues to ramp up its flight cadence and has several alpha vehicles in production to meet its strong demand, then I think there could be a responsive national security missions, and the customers are going to grow, especially with the government, which is going to continue to need this type of business to be around. So I'll stick around here for see if anyone has any questions. If not, I got some little stuff I got to do on my end. Nothing too crazy, but let me just turn on some music so we could all just chill out. And any questions at all, I'll stick around for, what time is it? Stick around for a couple minutes because I'm not doing much. Let me check a look at all the stocks. What happened to American Battery? What? That's insane. From where it was? Yeah, 0 reasons. After, was there something I missed? There has to be something I missed. The blue circles. Yeah, that's insane actually. Um, I'm very confused by that move by the stock, and I'm trying to figure out what is going on right now, but I'm struggling to find the news on it. Maybe I'm missing something. If I'm missing something, you guys can feel free to send it in the chat or message me. Um, did they raise them? It looks like they like diluted the company, but I feel like that didn't even happen with how far it dropped right after the call ended at 5. That is insane. Maybe because it was pre-recorded, people aren't happy about that. That might be it. I am not too sure. I am trying to figure it out. Um, Let me look here. It went up today because of nothing but speculation from a call. They gave no information, so plus 30%. Nah, I think these guys don't know what they're talking about. Okay, the volume's less than 400,000 shares. See, that's the one thing with Robinhood on my computer. I don't see that or anything. Um, ASTS did good. RCAT did good. Microvast was good. CNC's been on a ripper. What else we got? And then we got some cryptos. And I don't know why my watch list isn't loading everything. But I think I'm gonna wrap it out right here. Shout out to Leander, you're a beast. And for everyone else, I hope you have a great day. And if you have any questions, make sure you guys drop them down in the comments. I'm gonna upload this as a video. And if you're in the stream now, I'm sure there's gonna be an option to as soon as I end it. So if you have any questions, want to talk about the companies, I'm always open to doing that. So just leave me a message.